Welcome to Don's Death to Life Parenting. Today I'm going to be talking about control and how control is a good thing. Now, in parenting children, no matter what age, it is good for the parent to be in control. And I'm going to be talking about in context of early childhood, so from age 0 to, well, I'm up to about, my oldest daughter is 5, so that's really all I can speak to, but I can extrapolate out a little bit farther in terms of the ideas I'll discuss. But, you know, I feel like, at least in my life, control can have a negative connotation in terms of somebody being controlling or needing control or wanting control. And I'm going to talk about it as a positive thing. It's good and natural to want to be in control. It's a good thing to be in control of my own life, you know, as a man, as a parent. It's a good thing for I believe each and every person to be in control of their own life as whatever person they are, that God has given them the free will and decision making in their own sphere of influence. So back to parenting. I believe, and I practice this. I stay in control, and when I find myself losing control, when I'm with my girls, who are 1 and 5, my red and yellow flags start to go up, and I start sensing I need to do something different. I need to get back into control. And I'll give some examples here in a minute. And then the other principle is sharing control, which I'll talk about in another video, or sharing power. But in terms of just speaking again and kind of keeping it abstract, high level, the way that I parent is I stay in control of the situation. And just in general, in talking about in terms of the right relationship between a parent and a child, it is good for the parent to be in control. It is not good for the parent to not be in control. It is good for the child to not be in control, and it is not good for the child to be in control. It's not good for a child to perceive that they are in control of the parent. That is not a healthy dynamic for a child. It's not a healthy dynamic for a parent. And it's not on the child to establish this or regulate this or enforce this. It is completely upon the parent to lead the relationship in this way. And there are no, in the best way possible, there are no excuses. That it is on the parent. It is the parent's job to maintain control in the relationship and not allow the child to control the relationship. And there's some nuances, and I'll give some examples, but there are some nuances. The child can ask the parent to change the parent's mind. The child can try to persuade the parent, and the child can even try to persuade the parent. There's a spectrum of this. There's healthy ways in terms of asking the parent politely and kindly, and there's unhealthy ways by throwing a tantrum, and all of these are expected out of a child and normal. The child's job is to be a child, and the child will try what different things to try to get what the child wants, and this is good. This is normal. The child needs to try these things and needs to learn, hey, this works for me. This doesn't work for me. Here's what I'm going to keep doing. Here's what I'm not going to keep doing. And, it's the child's job to be a child and to learn, what the world's about and what the parent is willing to enable and not enable. And they will do that by any means necessary. And unfortunately and fortunately, the burden is on the parent to maintain control no matter what the child throws at them, and not enable things that don't are not, I'll use the word becoming of the child, and I'll get into kind of my take on what, the direction I try to lead my two girls. And, this all feeds back to that, but it is up to the parent to kind of filter the behaviors and make things not work for the child that should not work for the child, and make things work for the child that should work for the child. And again, the fortunate thing is the parent has influence here. The unfortunate thing is also, this is up to the parent to, largely, the parent is the number one influencer of this area, in a child's life, like what works and what doesn't work. So if the child throws a fit and the parent gives the child what they want, well, guess what? To the child, they got what they wanted. Do they care what's kind and not kind? No, and they shouldn't care. I believe they should not care yet. What I also believe is kindness should work out for them. Unkindness should not work out for them. And they learn just by experience, like what works and what doesn't. Just like and that's the other thing, they will learn by experience. I do not believe that, at least in my experience, children learn via lecture or via shame. Like labeling things kind and unkind is not my business. I do that for myself, of course. Well, actually, that's another story. Yes and no, but anyway, for parenting, I do not bestow the power of judgment onto my kids in terms of, if I start teaching them what's kind and unkind, I give them the power to, also justify themselves by saying, no, that was kind, when they are not equipped to judge yet. I've witnessed that power backfiring more. I just don't believe it's right to kind of teach a child to judge. But anyway, so back to control. So in the right relationship between a parent and child, it is good for the parent to be in control. Now, here's some examples. One thing my older daughter has tried, age 5, has been a couple things. One day, out of nowhere, she asked for, I think, a treat or something like that, and she said something like this out of nowhere. She goes, "Daddy, be a sweet daddy and give me a treat, please." And I don't know if she said please or not, but she's asking for a treat at a time when it's like there's pretty much no chance I'm going to say yes. But she just pulled that out of nowhere. Be a sweet daddy. And so this is a subtle way to try to control the outcome she wants. She wants a treat. Of course she does. She's a child. That's great. And I'm the daddy, and I, have to decide that if I'm going to give her one or not. And so she knows this, and she tries. And so part of me right away, I'm like, okay, I was a little, like a tiny little shock, like to the system. Like what in the world was that? I've never heard that before. The other part of me was like kind of laughing to myself, thinking, that this is a great try. This is a nice try. It ain't gonna work. I don't say that to her because she doesn't care. She's a kid. Again, she doesn't care what I think. She's not an adult. But I say, Ellie Jean, well, I'm a sweet daddy whether I give you a treat or not, and let me think about that. And then I told her pretty much immediately, I'm very sorry, Ellie Jean, I cannot give you a treat right now. I think she tried it one more time, and I gave her a similar answer. It's like, and of course, it's like, as the parent, I cannot think of a more irrelevant thing to getting a treat than if a child thinks you're a sweet parent or not. Like, again, she doesn't need to hear that or know that. But as a parent, it's like, it's good for me to be in control of her getting a treat or not. It is not good for her to sense like, oh, I just figured out something where I can have some control in getting a treat or not. There are appropriate things like, if I have a treat placed as kind of a reward for something, well, yeah, she can control her choices. She does the right thing, she gets a treat as a reward. Like, I'm okay with that. That's a healthy control in her own life. She makes the right choice. That's her choice to make. She gets a good outcome. Like, yeah, that I'm all for that. The way that she attempted to achieve control that is not the right way to do it, and not not worthy of even consideration to me. So that was one thing. And then lately she's also tried this, like, please, daddy, please, can you, which is like, okay, man, that's pulling on my heart a little bit more. It's not as obvious of a tactic, but I'm realizing, okay, well, the number of times she says please actually is also irrelevant to the decision I'm about to make. So, I don't think I said anything to her, but I said, I didn't treat it any differently than if she just asked, like, without saying please, or just normal, a normal situation where she didn't say please 1,000 times. So those are two kind of attempts to control a situation that, it's good when the parent can kind of absorb those, and, the child doesn't sense like they have a foothold in the parent's decision making, or, foothold in the situation where they should not have a foothold in. And then, another one, I'll probably address this on another video, because this is a deeper issue, a deeper, harder situation, is if a child just outright says no. It's like, a good one is, if we're leaving a playground, it's like, if I'm the parent, it's like, it's good for me to choose the time that we leave a playground. It's like, how many reasons could I give that the parent needs to be in control of when they leave, when you leave a playground? It's like, kid cannot possibly make that decision. And I don't even require my girls to even care about. I don't care if they care. I don't care that they know why we have to leave. All I care about is that they listen to me as their daddy. That'll be a different video. I explain more of that. But so leaving a playground, hey girls, time to go. And then you get this, no. Okay. Again, they're directly opposing the parents, control the situation. On the one hand, it's like, of course the child doesn't want to leave. Like, I don't expect a child to want to leave a playground. Like, why would they? Sometimes it might happen, but it's like, of course they don't want to leave. So they say no, they're trying to control that situation. And, one way that this is maybe a small introduction to the concept of sharing power. I share the power with them. So, my girls we're in such a rhythm now that this is not an issue anymore. It's just never an issue, because, I choose what I call time options. I say, girls, it's time for time options when I kind of feel like it's going to be time to go pretty soon. And I give them two options. I'm okay with either one. Sometimes I say that, sometimes I don't. And I say, all right, Ellie Jean, would you like to leave in 5 minutes or 7 minutes? And I let her choose. And I literally, I make sure, like, I'm completely okay, especially the 7 minute, the greater of the two options. Because sometimes I use 8 or 10 minutes, 10 or 12 minutes, 5 or 7 minutes, 4 or 6 minutes. I usually, it's just kind of what I'm feeling in the moment. I get to kind of be creative there, and I make sure that greater time, the 6 minute or the 12 minute, because 49 out of 50 times she chooses the greater time. Of course she does. So when I give her an option 4 minutes or 6 minutes, I fully expect her to pick 6 minutes. Again, she's a kid and she's at a playground. Of course she's going to want to stay longer. And I'm giving her a choice, appropriate, sharing of power, because as the adult, I'm okay with either option. I do not care. If she picks 4 and I want to leave soon, like, great, that's good for me. But you know, I usually just try to remain completely neutral and give her two options I am completely fine with. So, you know, that's one where I'm proactive about sharing control with, you know, the small child. Isla is almost 2, my younger one, and she is not quite old enough to understand this. She's just barely starting to get it. And I fully expect her to kind of snap into place kind of in the next 6 months in terms of the sharing power and being able to choose one of two options. But anyway, so, but if a child says no, that's a hard situation. I think I'm going to address that in another video. That's, you know, have a couple techniques to try. And you know, and if you try anything, again, I use the word try because everything is an experiment, and it may not work. Well, let me say this, it probably won't work the first time. If something works the first time, you know, I'm kind of like, oh, okay, that's great, let me try it again. I mean, sometimes some things it takes, you know, especially the time options. If you're not used, if your kids are not used to this, it's going to take a few times to kind of, and it's going to be harder, you know. And I'll do another video on exactly what to expect with the time options, you know, maybe the first time, and what issues I've run into that I had to work through. But, you know, now we're on such a routine. It's like, yeah, I can't remember the last time we had a problem like leaving somewhere. I guess that's it for the video. Let me know if